Good evening, folks. I'm smoking my Meerschaum pipe, part of March Meerschaum Madness. And in it I've got some BS 579 from the Danish Pipe Shop, from their own blend, which is a Sobranie copy. I'm going to tell you a story. I have no idea where it came from. I found it on my computer amongst all my stories, but I'm pretty certain I didn't write it. Somebody gave it to me, I think, but I have no idea who. I have no idea where it comes from. But it's called Making a Baby. So if any of you know where it's from or have heard it before, then if you know who wrote it, please let me know and I can attribute it. Right, are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. And I will be looking sort of to the side, I'm afraid. Making a baby. The Smiths were unable to conceive children, and they decided to use a surrogate father to start their family. On the day the proxy father was to arrive, Mr. Smith kissed his wife goodbye and said, "Well, I'm off now. The man should be here soon." Half an hour later, just by chance, a door-to-door baby photographer happened to ring the doorbell, hoping to make a sale. "Good morning, ma'am," he said. "I've come—" "No need to explain," Mrs. Smith cut in, embarrassed. "I've been expecting you." "Have you really?" said the photographer. "Well, that's good. Did you know that babies are my speciality?" "Well, that's what my husband and I had hoped. Please come in and have a seat." After a moment, she asked, blushing, "Well, where do we start?" "Leave everything to me. I usually try 2 in the bathtub, 1 on the couch, and perhaps a couple on the bed, and sometimes the living room floor is fun. You can really spread out there." Bathtub? Living room floor? No wonder it didn't work out for Harry and me. "Well, ma'am, none of us can guarantee a good one every time. But if I try several different positions, and I shoot from 6 or 7 angles, I'm sure you'll be pleased with the results." "My, that's a lot," gasped Mrs. Smith. "Ma'am, in my line of work, a man has to take his time. I'd love to be in and out in 5 minutes, but I'm sure you'd be disappointed with that." "Don't I know it," Mrs. Smith said quietly. The photographer opened his briefcase and pulled out a portfolio of his baby pictures. "This one was done on top of a bus," he said. "Oh, my God!" Mrs. Smith exclaimed, grasping at her throat. "And these twins turned out exceptionally well, when you consider their mother was so difficult to work with." "She was difficult?" asked Mrs. Smith. "Yes, I'm afraid so. I finally had to take her into the park to get the job done right. People were crowding around 4 and 5 deep to get a good look." "4 and 5 deep," said Mrs. Smith, her eyes wide with amazement. "Yes," the photographer replied, "and for more than 3 hours too. The mother was constantly squealing and yelling. I could hardly concentrate. And when darkness approached, I had to rush my shots. Finally, when the squirrels began nibbling on my equipment, I just had to pack it in." Mrs. Smith leaned forward. "Do you mean they actually chewed on your equipment?" "It's true, ma'am. Yes. Well, if you're ready, I'll set up my tripod and we can get to work right away." "Tripod?" "Oh, yes, ma'am, I need to use a tripod to rest my Canon on. It's much too big to be held in the hand, and very long." Mrs. Smith fainted. Well, I don't know what you thought of that story, but I thought it was hilarious when I read it. I'd love to know where I got it from or where it came from, but I'm not claiming it as my own because I'm fairly certain that style isn't my style of writing. I think I'll leave it there rather than going on and having a ramble. Sorry, I'll just light up this. But I do want to say thank you for all those of you who responded to my last video. You've made me feel better about the prospects if I do have to give up smoking, by sort of saying that I shouldn't leave the group. That set my mind at rest for whatever happens. I'm seeing the nurse in, I think, a week's time or so. She wanted just to let things settle for a bit before she sort of had me in for blood pressure and for checking my heart again. I have had a heart attack a few years back, and then I had some stents put in, and things were a lot better. So I'm not too worried about the future, but we'll just see. Anyway, folks, may you be richly blessed. May blessings pour down upon you. And may your God always be with you and never let go of your hand. And as I say, if you don't have a God, then live life. Live life in all its fullness, as those who believe in God would live their lives, because life's short.